Welcome, everyone. You would not believe who we have here. This is Jack Phantom and the Exquisite Corpse Cabaret, the dark jazz project from Pensacola, Florida, creating music for quiet, introspective evenings, watching the rain come down outside while holding a glass of scotch. I would have like Pinot Grigio with you, not scotch. The project is the brainchild of Jack Phantom, sitting right here, a classically trained actor and musician with a fascinatingly eclectic background. Now, Jack was born to an English family raised in Canada, so he's from where I am as well. His musical journey was shaped by misspent youth, playing punk and speed metal. I'm going to ask you what speed metal is. Contrasted with a family appreciation for the symphony, the project's genesis come from a chance comment made by punk icon Henry Rollins, we know who he is, who wondered where Generation X's jazz was. The, this prompted Phantom to explore subgenres like bop and West Coast cool and ultimately pick up the saxophone. The result is a globe-trotting, hectic patchwork of life experiences filtered through the jazz idiom. The exquisite corpse cabaret is more than just music. It's a curated experience. Phantom is passionate about revitalizing style and grooming, advocating for dressing well, which we can see he wears a suit right now, and living with fewer, nicer things, like minimalist. Even becoming a barber in pursuit of this philosophy. It's pretty awesome. The live performance is described as a blend of electronics, live woodwind, and background video. As you see in the background video, creating a show that is part concert, part movie, and part confessional, exploring themes of addiction, death, and the human condition. With a sound that's both beautiful, atmospheric, and raw, welcome Jack Phantom to the OnStage podcast. Pleased to meet you here.
Good to be met. Nice to meet you.
You're very welcome. I'm so happy to see you, and I really enjoy what you got going on here. So, let's go back to the beginning. Can you tell me exactly what life was like growing up and what brought you here where you are now?
By here, you mean musically, or here you mean where I
Musically.
am? Okay, fair enough. Yeah. No, growing up, I was lucky enough to have parents that listened to any of a number of different genres of music. Um, I became particularly fascinated by it and listened to whatever I could. Um, they were very big on the arts. My mother was. Her father belonged to a gramophone society in Bolton, England, and curated collecting classical records for their local library. So she grew up with music, and she took me to the National Arts Centre in Ottawa to performances by Sir Yehudi Menuhin and others. And so I gained an appreciation for not only the stuff that was being played on the radio and the stuff that was in my parents' record collection. My mom had a great collection of 60s records, which she'd collected when she was young. Some of which I destroyed as a toddler, I'm afraid, but that contained Howlin' Wolf and various other BBC collections of the hits of the day. Again, it's all the only thing she didn't listen to, strangely enough, was jazz. It took me many years later to actually listen to that.
That's pretty awesome. So, what sort of genres and music that you were listening to that you said, "Oh, I like that. I want to be there. I want to do that," or
Well, a lot, given that I became a teenager in the 80s, there was a lot of minimalist music out there. If you remember, you're probably about the same age as I am. There were bands who did U2 played very sparsely. You also had A Flock of Seagulls,
oh yeah,
their famous hit. And if you actually picked it up, and I picked up the guitar as a teenager and played some of those songs and realized they were really simple to play. I didn't need to study for years and years and years, and quite a few of the sort of junior high school and high school bands out there were able to very comfortably reproduce some of the songs that they were hearing on the radio, because they were so. It was all about space between the notes, and it was all about big sounds, a lot of reflected sound, but the parts themselves were relatively simple. And if I remember correctly, U2 sort of retconned their name by saying it's you too can be a rock star. I mean, it's not rocket science. So a lot of that stuck with me. Of course, as a young man, I got, like most of the other people in the suburbs did, into punk and metal. You had Metallica, you had Megadeth that were playing very, very virtuoso style pieces. And one of the things that impacted me at the time, but I didn't realize it until later, was the fact that being a guitarist and wanting to be as fast as everyone else was and as complicated as everyone else was, I spent hours and hours and hours I could have spent doing other more useful things, trying to play as fast as Yngwie Malmsteen or as technically competent as Steve Vai. And then if ever I got up in front of a group of people and tried to play like that, nobody cared. They were just, it's like a dentist drill. Can you play some 12-bar blues or something? And of course it annoyed me that they couldn't see what I saw in the same music. But later on, I listened back to it and I'm like, yeah, I can see why that wasn't going anywhere long term, why grunge was just such a breath of fresh air. And then later on, when I started listening to jazz, which a lot of people look at as, grandpa music and opaque music that's difficult to get into, they're usually thinking about some of the more experimental or the bebop stuff, which is really fast with a lot of pentatonic shifting. And John Coltrane, who's brilliant, technically brilliant, incredibly amazing player, but he starts playing all this stuff and the average person just loses it. If you subject people to earlier jazz that was tuneful and was a song and had something with a melody you could recognize, they dig it. And that's another thing that stuck with me later. And it came from the 80s when I realized the simpler and the more beautiful and the more space you had for people to just experience what was going on, the better the experience you had listening to it. It took me a long time to figure that out, even though I was experiencing it at the time. But that's what fed into what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I can imagine that, Jack. I like the idea of the whole Henry Rollins comment, the clear catalyst. What was the first musical idea that formed after that? And how did it evolve into the sound of the Cabaret, distinct from your punk and metal background?
So when he said that, it was an interview somewhere. I don't know if I read it online or if I read it in a trade paper, but I was going to dismiss that. And I said, that's actually a really interesting question. What would we have done? So I thought, okay, well, what did Generation X tend to do? They tended to strip things down. If you listen to the Melvins or you listen to the Screaming Trees or listen to Nirvana, it was 3-chord rock, and it was also very emotive. It was not designed for something for you to just sort of casually put on in the background and walk away from. I mean, if you were listening to Smells Like Teen Spirit, you were banging your head to it and jumping up and down, right? So I tried to think through, okay, well, if we field stripped this down and we made it heavily emotive and we really felt, and so I started listening to quite a bit of jazz. I started with Dave Brubeck because going into Guitar Center, they would play a loop of Joe Morello soloing. And at the time I was drumming, and I really, really appreciated the fact that the guy was just playing with virtuosity, but also with taste, which was something I didn't see a lot of in the 80s. It was an arms race of how fast, how technical, how whatever. Excuse me, I'm going to adjust these. And so when I heard him doing that, but like pulling back and then playing with having that speed, but not using it, it really made me think about what you could do with a song. And if you listen to songs like Take 5 or later on Kind of Blue, my father played the trumpet later in life, so he had a Miles Davis record, and I listened to So What, and I was like, it's very simple. There's not fast at all, it's just expressive. And so I just sat down and said, okay, in the same vein that as a do-it-yourself punk person, okay, you get some friends together, play 3-chord rock, and find a place to play, plug in somewhere and do that, maybe, just maybe, I could get a series of instruments together and learn them enough to play the songs, the sounds I heard in my head and the way I wanted to play them. And that's basically what I did. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of went around the houses there.
Yeah, I understand that. And your music is like you handle all the instruments, programming. Like, how do you balance the raw live energy of the woodwinds with the controlled, textured environment electronics during your songwriting process?
So one of the things that I initially decided to do was to follow a song format. A lot of people, when they think about jazz, they think about, okay, we're just going to, you take 12 bars, and you take 12 bars, and you take 12 bars, and it's all improvisational, and there's risk and everything, and that's fun. But I wanted I needed, because I can't play everything all at once, that I was going to have to put together a backing track. I was going to have to play the instruments and then record them and then play that back. But I didn't just want to be a guy standing with a saxophone or an upright bass, just standing there like, okay, here's me doing karaoke, right? So I decided that every single song was going to be a full-on performance. I did a backing video for it where I edited myself playing the other instruments and some old vintage pieces of found footage, police procedurals from the 1950s, B movies that are in the public domain, and some truly horrifying PSAs that were done back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, so it's there and it's structured, but again, going back to the 1980s, if you listen to the Eurythmics, you had a very, very synthesized, very, MIDI'd to the teeth, like these dreams are made of this, was just sequenced to the back teeth, but you still had a guy playing guitar and you had a woman singing over it, bringing that organic element that tied it all together. And I'm like, okay, if I use a wind instrument like the alto sax, which I mostly play, or the tenor sax or the soprano sax or a clarinet, based on what it is that I'm playing, there's still that sort of live involvement. And if you see me walking back and forth, even if I'm in kind of shadow like I am now, this experience and that experience, and it all sort of blends together into a liminal space, which you're experiencing, you're not listening to, it's not a standard type of performance. You're somewhere else. And that's one of the things I really wanted to do with what I'm doing, which is why it's difficult for me. I can't necessarily go down and play, we've got some, the Harley Davidson dealership needs somebody to show up for half an hour in a tent somewhere out in the open in the sunlight. It doesn't work. So I play very few and far between, and I pick the places that I play, which really limits me. If I was to try to do this for a living as such, I couldn't do it. I have to have a day job in order to make it work. But I really wanted to, if you came to a show and you were in that darkened room, and I played in fetish clubs, I played in art galleries, I played in punk clubs, and every single audience was not expecting it, and they just walked away going, what is that? Like, how did you come up with this idea to hell with it, just build an experience? And it's because a lot of the ways that we consume music these days is not music as such. You're either going to a concert, or you're playing it in a video game, or you're watching it in a movie soundtrack. So if you're trying to compete with just a stream on a radio, it's very difficult to do. But luckily, that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to have something that was all-inclusive. So there's a record, if you want to put it on your record player and sit back in the dark and have a cigarette in one hand or Pinot Grigio in the other, and be like, okay, I'm going to vibe out to this for an hour. You can. But if you come out to the show, you're not going to get the same experience, because it's going to be just in your face, 120-inch screen, full-on performance. It's something I really like doing, and I try to get as many opportunities to do it as I can.
Yeah, you're talking about like the experience. Like the project is named Exquisite Corpse, and you describe it as an experience. So beyond the sound, what are the essential elements, be they visual, narrative, or atmospheric, needed to build the complete world of the cabaret?
So someone pointed out that, and in another interview, somebody said, you're that committed to the character. And it's like, no, I wear suits on a regular basis. I'm known. I've gone to punk clubs in suits. I've gone to job interviews in suits. I've gone to movies in suits. I've flown on airplanes in suits. At my age and at my station in life, and what I like to do, I really appreciate wearing suits. My hair, as you can see, has got Brill cream in it. It's combed back. You can't smell the fact that I'm wearing cologne, but I am wearing cologne. That's part of it. You see a guy come up on a stage and he's put together well, and you just see, elements of noir and elements of, crime fiction and stuff like that. And you realize you're not suddenly anymore listening to. One of the things that I've tried to bring back in the jazz idiom is the fact that it used to be considered satanic music, and it used to be considered dangerous music, and it used to be considered the province of, lowlives. I mean, if you went to see a jazz club, many of them were integrated at a time when that was illegal. A lot of the guys who played this music were straight up addicts. Many of the clubs were owned by gangsters. It was not necessarily the safest place to be. In fact, one of my earliest experiences with jazz music was Cab Calloway on Sesame Street. I'm sure you've heard him singing Minnie the Moocher surrounded by all those Muppets.
Yeah.
If you actually go back and analyze the slang of that song, it's about a man picking up a teenage runaway, getting her hooked on opiates, and then selling her. And there he is with a bunch of Muppets to children, because we've lost the context. So he's there with a bunch of Muppets. Yeah.
What Rihanna's song "Umbrella" was really about, you'd be like, okay, that's not my song. My wife and
Right.
yeah.
But most people, when they think of jazz, as the guy from the Mighty Boosh said, it's for science teachers and the mentally ill. It's like, no, Frank Sinatra beat the living crap out of people. Max Roach broke Ornette Coleman's saxophone and threatened to break his jaw at the same time. I mean, these guys were not, the sort of, classical music, like nicey guys that you tended to think. And I wanted to bring some of that edge back. So again, one of the best shows that I played was in the Milestone Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was a punk club. And the places, there were gaps between the boards that formed the wall to the outside. And, it was just a plank floor. But, I was there and I was playing and the audience was just totally into it. It was great.
Now, for your personal practice of wearing suits all the time, your personal practice is a non-negotiable for you in maintaining mental well-being and preventing burnout amidst the demands of the music industry.
Well, I wouldn't say I was necessarily part of an industry, but for me, it's just part of my own identity. When you see me walk into wearing a suit, I've walked into any of a number of places wearing a suit, and almost immediately it's like, this guy is making a statement, right? And the thing is that a suit, the kind of suit that I'm wearing right now is a classic American silhouette. It's not the kind of silhouette that you would get in like a European formal type situation. This is what men wore. I'll show you any of a number of pictures of men in the 1950s taking the Greyhound bus wearing a fedora and dressed like this with their shoes shined. It's just what you did. If you wanted to present yourself to the world, you put your best foot forward. And the reason why we do this in jazz, did do this in jazz, is because Thelonious Monk, who was the progenitor of that sort of Blues Brothers look, the black suit, black tie, white shirt, and fedora, said, if you have an audience showing up and paying you to play, you don't show up dressed like you show up looking the part. You look sharp. You look good. You sound good. You give them what they're paying for, and that's just something that stuck with me. I'm in my 50s now, so that's another part of the reason of the suits, right? You can only sort of wear Chuck Taylors and board shorts for so long. You start to get to a certain age, and you got to start dressing a bit older. That's my take, anyway. It's my preference. It's my preference. Let's put it that way.
So, in what ways has creating and performing this instrumental music served as a therapeutic outlet for processing complex emotions like those in "Heroin Girl" or "Goodbye to Love"?
I'm not good with words. I find words very cringy. I'm slightly on the spectrum, so I'm used to words being misunderstood or landing wrong. So I would much rather put a mood out there and have you read into it what's there. And so when you do that, when you produce an instrumental piece of music, it's much more the audience participating in understanding what you're doing as much as it is you putting it out. If you tell the audience what it's about by giving them lyrics and telling them a story, you can do that. That's fine. And they can come along, they could be there with you. There's a whole genre, rap, where you just sit there as a raconteur. The really good ones, like Notorious B.I.G., would just sit there and tell a story, which is one of the oldest forms of entertainment known to man. But that's not my jam. If I'm presenting a liminal space for you to experience something in, I want you to come away with mood. I want you to come away with a feeling. And if I spoon feed it to you by giving you words, right, it makes it all the more difficult. It's why I spent a lot of time and energy really tuning in the instruments that I use, the mouthpieces and the reeds. I spent hours experimenting with those combinations. And because I knew I wasn't going to play very many notes, and the ones I was going to play were going to have to be there to set the tone, right? So for me, it's all about whatever emotion I'm wanting to process or whatever experience I want to revisit or tell somebody else. I don't really care so much about you knowing, okay, it was this person and this is what happened to this person and this is where it happened to this person. I want you to get a sense of how that made me feel, how that made the people involved, how they experienced it, how they felt, what the mood was, everything about that in terms of their emotional state. That for me is what the songwriting process is about. It's all a means to an end.
So you say you're not good with words. I guess if you autism spectrum disorder, you wouldn't be good with music, or do you put that in someone else's hands?
No, I do music. No, oh, absolutely, for sure. I'm just saying, I tend to find that if I try to explain myself to somebody with words, it doesn't work that well. But if I explain it with music, it works that well. One of the weird things about how neurodivergence works, as I've come to learn, is it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some people are really good at some things and not at others. I mean, my mom told me that when I was a toddler, I was barely walking, and I would walk over to she would go to some church hall thing for some meetings or whatever, flea market, mother's group, whatever it was that she was doing. And I would just quietly pick out a tune on the piano. Something I just heard recently. I would just sit there and I would, within a few moments, be playing that. I mean, not the melody of it, obviously, but as soon as I found the first note and I figured out, and she was like, you did that a lot more quickly than you should have done. But I didn't speak for the first 8 months of life. I mean, she was begging me to say something. So it all depends on how you're wired. Some people are wired for math. I'm practically enumerate, which is weird for a musician. Usually musicians have a really good sense of number time. It just depends. It's the luck of the draw. I managed to get the one that cared about mood and about emotional state, right? Yeah.
Yeah. How have you seen the conversation around mental health evolve within the music community, and what positive shifts in support or stigma have you observed?
I've noticed that musicians tend to be very open about a lot of their experiences. They tend to be giving people. They tend to share. I mean, if you're on stage putting yourself out there, I mean, there's people who write music and score it and do that in their bedroom. They put it on Bandcamp and you never hear from them. That's fine. But for those people that choose to be in any way in the public sphere, who put themselves out there in any way, they tend to can't be anything other than open about what and who they are and what it is that feeds into themselves. That's always been the case. I think more recently we're starting to see people dial back because people are now a lot less forgiving, and we're seeing with bigger audiences and with time now being irrelevant. Because it used to be, if you said something stupid in an interview, I mean, a week later it's completely forgotten. I mean, nobody's going to go back and listen to that radio broadcast again, right? But once something's put on the internet and somebody decides to capture it, cut and paste it, do whatever with it, rebroadcast it, hey, this person said this. Well, they may not have said that, but okay, the bit that you cut and pasted did, right? I mean, one of the biggest problems for these social media sites is when they're doing moderation, right, all they see is that one piece of text that somebody's either complaining about or not complaining about. They don't know not only the context of the way the person said it, who they were saying it, right, what they were responding to, who the other person is in the conversation, right? Yeah. All they see is just that one explicit bit of text. So you see people starting now to really start to hold their cards a little closer to their chest because of just, again, I mean, just this week you had Taylor Swift and everyone's like, oh, is she a Nazi? Because it kind of looks like a lightning bolt. I mean,
yeah.
And she was standing next to somebody with a shirt on or something like that. It's like, I've been in situations where I've tried to pack stuff up, and people have walked up to me and taken pictures with me, and I couldn't tell you even what color their eyes were, their hair were, never mind what they were wearing, right? So again, I think what you're starting to see now is people starting to pull back and starting to armor their public image. They really, really curate what they say and what's said about them. And I don't blame people one bit. We're becoming a lot less forgiving as a society, and there's good and there's bad to that, right? Mind you, I'm sort of anachronistic in the sense that I can sometimes separate the art from the artist, and I can sometimes understand a context that they grew up with. I mean, if you were raised a certain way and only ever believed a certain set of things, you can't escape the worldview you were brought up with any more than a fish can't avoid being wet. The question is what is the, can you separate the artwork from the person? And there's a lot of people who can't. So you got to even be careful about what you say you admire.
So one of your songs, they say, "Wow, Jack, wow, like I can't believe I." So that song is about whatever, and you're like, "No, it's not about that. It's about this." But I don't see it that way. I see it this way. Do you correct them, or do you just say, "Yeah, it could be"?
No, I just tell them this is how I wrote it. And again, it's like everything else. See, all communication of any kind, it's not what you say, it's what somebody else hears, right? And truly gifted people can say things and people hear it exactly the way they want to understand it. You can only really do that if you say something that's either very, very simple or so coded that people will absolutely automatically follow your train of thought. Heroin Girl, for example, is not about a girl who did heroin, who I knew. As you may or may not have read in your prep for this, it's about a friend of mine when I was in Montreal who was a hitman who said that he knew he was hooked on heroin. He knew he was hooked, not from any physical symptoms, any physical symptoms or anything like that. But when he heard a song on the radio, and it was a love song, and he was like, "That's not about any human woman. That's about heroin." He sat there and to him, they were singing about a wonderful, perfect love, and he was like, "Yep, that's heroin. That's what they're singing about." And it was at that point that he knew he had a problem.
Yeah, it's sort of like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds said, "That's about LSD." I said, "No, it isn't. It's talking about a son who,
Sure.
you know." But we interpret it anyway. Like, bridge over troubled water. The bridge is the veins, and the troubled water is like
Right,
this.
right.
You know, the syringe. Yeah, so we can read
Hotel
it.
Hotel California is the Church of Satan. Yeah, I've heard all of that. But
Yeah.
again, the question I have though is, okay, well, even if you've had that interpretation of it, did you enjoy it? I mean, I'm sure Paul McCartney was. Did they pay for the record? Oh yeah, okay. But for me, it would be, did you enjoy it? Did whatever, however you read it, did it move you? Yes, did it? Perfect. I'm not going to correct you. That's fine, right?
Well, when you're talking about like in things in Sesame Street and stuff like not meant for children, I'm always thinking like I liked Ernie and Bert, but now they're saying that Ernie and Bert had like a homosexual relationship, but it was sort of like indiscreet.
They're Muppets. I mean, why are we?
I know.
There have been, again, but what you need to read in that, and whenever you see anybody doing like that or hearing that, what they're looking for is they're looking for representation and they're looking for acceptance. They're looking to see that it's okay that there are other people like themselves. They're looking for some kind of anything that they can identify with. I mean, there's so many things that have become coded for marginalized communities over the years where they've watched that and they've got, yeah, that's me. The Babadook apparently is a big gay icon as well, right? Which is a horror film about, well, I don't actually remember what it was about. It was about a kid screaming. But anyway, where I'm going with this is, there is a temptation to say that's not what they meant, that's not what it is, it's a children's show, what's wrong with you? But part of me just goes, okay, you're seeing two men were living together and they're not 100% compatible as people, but they make it work, they have a relationship, and they're navigating that. And if that gives you comfort and that gives you strength, and if you choose to interpret it that way as something that helps you get through all the struggles and challenges you have as a marginalized person, I don't mind. I can't speak for Jim Henson, but I don't think he would have minded either. He didn't seem the sort.
No. But there's one thing I'd be very interested in asking, and I always ask my artists this question. Now, I want to talk about the AI voice cloning in music. Now,
Sure.
are you familiar with Rick Beato, who discovered and created a pop icon named Sadie Winters? It is a song called "Walking Away," which was totally done in AI, Suno Uriel, and he was
Oh
so
yeah.
surprised how good it was that he liked it. And then he lobbied that any song you create from Suno, whatever, no copyright. So, but it's pretty
Well,
good. So, where do you personally draw the ethical line with AI, like particularly between using it as a creative tool and the non-consensual cloning of an artist's voice? Like, for instance, you do a duet with David Bowie, for instance.
I would never do anything like that because I don't have David Bowie's permission, and I could never get David Bowie's permission to do that. It's really an awful thing to put words into somebody else's mouth or to contextualize. You can interpret something in some way. That's one thing. If you watch Ernie and Bert on the screen, you go, I think of them as a gay couple because watching them navigate, an odd couple type relationship works for me. And it's an entirely another for me to actually take that material and put my own words in that person's mouth. That is blasphemous to me because they don't have the opportunity. And you might say, well, what's wrong with, having, somebody sing a duet? Well, what if what if I was Screwdriver and I was having David Bowie sing racist lyrics or homophobic lyrics or, Nazi lyrics or something that he would have absolutely disagreed with? Mm-hmm. I mean, if there's without those safeguards, but my concern with AI and art is less so. I mean, there's already a signal and noise problem. Putting AI in there is not going to make it easier or worse, right? There's 3 core problems with AI, and the first one is this. When an artist puts something out and somebody else consumes it, unless it's the most vapid bubblegum out there, there is some attempt on the artist's part to make you feel something and to make you hear something and make you see something you've never seen before, right? And then there's also, there's that interplay with the audience. I'm giving you this, you're picking that up. And you may take it in a direction I've never thought of, right? So if I'm sitting here typing into an AI prompt, it's like, I want a song about my cat Mittens and make it a swing jazz thing. Wonderful. I have a novelty record, but I have something that's curated explicitly to me, right? Which leads me to the second problem, which is you have algorithmic flattening. So one of the things that's happened, and again, I'm going to go back to the 80s and to the collapse of speed metal and hair metal, is you have one generation of music that does something different. Somebody comes up with an idea and they don't make a penny off it. The Melvins, the Screaming Trees, the people that start something, right? And then you have the second group of people that kind of pick up on it and refine it enough so that they kind of hit it big. Your Run DMCs, your Nirvanas, the people they're not like the established masters of the genre that came in after everyone else paved the way. They were there as it was being developed, right? But then in previous to what we're doing now, what you would have is like, for example, in Seattle, as soon as you started hearing Soundgarden and Nirvana making it big, you'd have all these A&R guys going in there and say, I want to find the same thing. I want... and so what bands would do is they would go, okay, we've got to somehow be more Soundgarden than Soundgarden, right? And so what you would have is an algorithmic narrowing. And it was self-selected, and it was selected absolutely by commerce, right? I'll give you hair metal as an example, right? If one guy had 2 bass drums, the next guy had to come along with 3. If that guy had 3, somebody had to come up with 4. 4, 5. You'd have a band like you'd have a band with a drum set like Terry Bozzio, right? And then a guitarist who had at least 36 guitars on hand, all of which were fluorescent colors, right? And it was just an arms race. It's like, can we have bigger hair? Can we have more derivative lyrics? Can we have faster solos? And eventually it just collapses under its own pretension. And then something else comes in to burst through and says, we're done. But with AI, lacking creativity, the only thing it can do is funnel. Okay, we selected for this. Cool. 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 And the next thing you know, and again, it started happening before AI. You'll notice there's no records anymore in a Best Buy. There are no CDs for sale anywhere, pretty much anywhere. You have to go to very specialist shops to do it, right? Mm. And it's mostly because we've gotten to the point now where the algorithms are narrowing so much. Here's a fascinating data point for you, and then I'll stop monopolizing the conversation. Back in the 1980s, you put a gun to my head, I could not tell you anything about Tom Petty at all. I couldn't tell you where he was born. I couldn't tell you how old he was. I couldn't tell you anything about his family life, who he was dating, or anything like that. But I heard the songs and I could recognize them and I could sing them. I have not heard a single song by Taylor Swift. I know who Taylor Swift is dating. I know that she was born in Pennsylvania. She moved to Tennessee. I know everything about that woman's life story, right? But on the radio, I've never heard one of her songs come on. I've never been in a mall and heard one of her records being played. That exposure to all these, you don't get it anymore. You have to specifically go looking for it. Right? Now, I suppose if I could go to YouTube right now, I could watch every performance she's ever done in a bootleg format. But I don't know what's out there unless I specifically go and look for it. And it's because everything's just narrowed to the point where it's so flat. You listen to 3 albums by 3 artists, and that's the entire spectrum of what's out there. Unless you're in some really niche thing. And I'll give the floor back to you, because I'm sure I've talked your ear off already.
That's okay. So even if AI can perfectly replicate a sound, what core elements of human artistry and musical expression do you believe it can never replicate?
It can imitate. And again, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to take jazz in a different direction. And I know this is going to be something that's going to upset some people, but part of the reasons why people fell off listening to jazz is because, yeah, you go to a jazz club and you'd hear the classics. Oh yeah, Autumn Leaves, got it. Oh yeah, you're going to play Around Midnight? Perfect, right? 20 to 25 weeks in, yes, okay, perfect. They're playing the same songs over and over again, and they're doing wonderful things with the solos. They're finding different things in there. They're doing pentatonic shifting. They're doing triads, modern sound. They're doing a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still the same song over and over and over again, right? There's a market for it, which is why they keep doing it, right? But point of the matter is, you get an algorithmic flattening, right? So one of the things I wanted to do was make sure I never covered anything, and that I tried to throw elements in there that weren't existing in jazz, so that, people would even wonder, is this jazz? And that's fine. You can do that too. But whatever I'm putting out there, I want it to, even if you don't like it, at least it's something that you haven't heard before, right? And the thing about AI is it does exactly that. Just like how, okay, I've listened to 300 albums by that, and now I'm going to get up on stage and play I can't help but be influenced by the fact I heard those 300 records. And yes, I've studied those scales and everything. And I'm going to pull out some licks from Hip Licks, and I'm going to, you know what I'm saying? There's like somebody played something, somebody listened to something, somebody transcribed something, somebody played that again. Somebody heard somebody transcribe and play it, so they're playing it too. AI is doing the same thing, right? Now again, you still have the human element in a human performance of they're interacting with the audience, they're putting their own soul into it, they're playing with a certain amount of expressiveness, and they can find new ways to play the same thing. But an AI is fundamentally autocomplete. If it sees the word and you start with 3 letters and it puts the rest of them in an autocomplete, it can't do anything novel. It can only do what it's seen before. And it can't put any spin or any English or do anything with cadence or timing or emotion or expression. It can only do what it's heard before. There's no creativity there by definition. It's only percentages. What you're looking at is dice rolls. It's most likely to be this, let's go for it. Actually, it's worse than that. It's most likely what you want to hear, as best as I understand it. And I'll give you exactly what you're looking for. And speaking of Suits and the 60s, the Twilight Zone had a wonderful piece on there where a gangster is shot, goes down supposedly to the afterlife, and everything goes his way. He gets everything he wants. He goes and plays craps, always wins. Every single story in human history that talks about people getting what they want, the monkey's paw, right? The genie, you make a wish, you make a deal with the devil. It's not about what the universe can give to you, it's what you're telling and imposing on the universe that you want. AI, you're my genie, I want you to provide exactly this for me. Well, you will be cursed to get exactly what you asked for.
Oh my goodness. Like the Wishmaster, like he'll do the wish. Like, have you ever seen a Wishmaster? You
I
give
have,
him
yes.
a wish, and it doesn't turn out. That was like, I want $1 million, but then he does something like, you gotta make sure that if you say you want to win the lottery, that
And even then, right? I mean, again,
some,
yeah, but AI gives you everything you've ever asked for, right? And this is why we need to make sure that anybody that does science or that does computers or technology, which is my day job, right, starts out in the humanities, reads stories, watches The Sorcerer's Apprentice and Fantasia, reads Frankenstein, right? And hey, wait a minute, let's pump the brakes on this. What are we going to be doing here, right? I think that's the biggest danger to AI. Not that it's going to cost somebody, one specific person, their job, although that's a tragedy. The biggest problem is that it may make music completely irrelevant, because it's like, if I'm just being fed the mood I want to have, I want to feel happy, magically cook up something that will make me feel exactly what I want. I guarantee you'll stop listening to music right then and there, because it's like, okay, I'm getting everything I want. It's exactly like the ending. I'm in the other place, right? And that's my take on AI and art. It's just it's wrong on all levels.
well, I know someone who put the first 8 seconds of Hey Jude through an AI and it completed it, but it wasn't the actual just the first 8 seconds, but it completed it how it saw it, not like Hey Jude, it didn't do all that. It was just made up stuff. I've seen
But
some. You should check that out. Sadie Winters. It's Walking
hmm.
Away, and I've heard some songs by Amy Grant, or you can make Johnny Cash sing a Britney Spears song. It's not too bad. But
You
how
can't
do you
make Johnny
think?
Cash. No, Johnny Cash wouldn't have sung that song. And
I
the
know,
thing is,
but
if Johnny Cash had sung that song, I would have been more interested in him singing it just to see what he would have interpreted it as. You see what I'm
no.
saying? Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so have you ever heard of this the group Aqua? They did the song Barbie Girl.
Yes, I have heard that. I
You
think
can
it's a
brush
great
my
song.
hair and
Yeah.
dress me up. Well, they got Johnny Cash singing that, and he goes, "You can brush my hair and touch me." And I'm like, I don't want to listen to
So let me ask you this question: what do we gain out of having that? I mean, it's a cute gimmick, and it's a nice thing that gets you a momentary brain rot attention in a Vine
because
or an Instagram reel. But no, but hear me out. We already have Barbie Girl by Aqua. It's already been written. It's out there. Okay, and I'm saying, why do we need another one? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I really, really am looking to hear something new that young people are coming up with. I mean, they're doing a great job of keeping punk alive. They're doing a great job of keeping rap alive. But it's like, I want to hear what you have your own stuff that you're coming up with based on your own experiences
well,
and where you've come from, right? I want to see the world through your eyes, not through a computer simulation of what they
but
are simulating somebody else is doing. I don't know. It's just for me. It's just my own personal thing, right?
what if lead singer Lena Nystrom from Aqua wants to hear people sing Barbie Girl? Maybe she's obsessed. Think I want to see if David Bowie can sing it. She might get so obsessed she'll say, "You know what? I heard Britney Spears sing Aqua, and Barbie Girl. I love that song. I love how she sings it." But
Right.
it
But again, you would need David Bowie's consent to do that.
but if it's Britney Spears thing, you should just say, "Okay, let's contact Britney Spears and say, listen, I got you to sing Barbie Girl, and it
Yeah,
sounds
there's nothing wrong with
beautiful.
that.
So
Oh
can
no,
you
no.
do it?
Look,
Can you
if you
do it?"
want, look, and this happens all the time. I mean, like, look at what happened when Johnny Cash did "Hurt" by Nine Inch Nails. They
Yeah.
went to him and said, "Here's the song. Listen to it." And he didn't just do his voice over the existing song, right? I mean, the cadence was slowed down, and what you heard when you heard Johnny Cash sing that song about the empire of dirt, and he wanted to feel something that day. He was singing that as a man who was dying in a house somewhere in the middle of Tennessee. There was an emotional weight there that a computer just could not add because it's never had that experience. It could simulate a young Johnny Cash just going through the motions of putting that together. But by God, it won a Grammy, if I remember correctly, to have that man read those lyrics.
All right. So how about this question? So if you could collaborate with a musician from a genre completely foreign to your own, who would
Mm.
it be, and what would you hope to learn or fuse into your sound?
Now, that's a really, really interesting question. Actually a really fascinating question. Um, and it caught me by surprise. From a genre that I don't work with, let's see. I would probably want to collaborate with somebody along the lines of Trent Reznor, who's been very, very good at synthesizing experience and who I
Wow.
think has similar ideas to myself. He released an album and he basically gave people permission to remix. I mean, if you bought like the box set for like $5,000 or something like that, you got all the stems, all the sources, and complete permission to do whatever you wanted with it.
Wow.
And I think that kind of creative out of the box thinking of I'm giving you tools to build your own experience with would get me to think laterally about what I'm doing. I mean, obviously, we both are aligned in the sense of trying to make people feel darker emotions, but I think his acceptance of technology, his overall creativity, his willingness to adapt, and his willingness um, to think outside the box in terms of how he presents stuff. I would have said Beck, but I don't think it would have worked as well.
Beck Hansen. Wow. What a guy. That music that he does is so strange.
Yeah, he released one album as just sheet music. Like play it however you want. Like here it is. Here's the notation. Just go with it. I'm not recording it. I want you to figure out how it would sound.
Well, like I said, a musician from genre completely foreign to your own. Now I'm going to give you an idea. So, you ever heard of Tom McDonald? He wrote that song "End of the World." Tom McDonald. He's got piercings and he's got tattoos 80% around his. He's a rapper. Tom McDonald.
No,
Well, if
not
you
familiar. I'm sorry. You're giving me so many people to listen
okay,
to.
so you ever heard of John Rich? He's a country singer.
Yes, I have.
They did the duet together. "End of the World."
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
weird
No, of
stuff, but
course.
it was fantastic. Maybe not as good as like the stupid one with Elton John and Britney Spears, which
Well, the
was
thing is,
totally
if
waste of
you
time. But
if you're into music and
yeah,
you like music, right? You don't gatekeep. I mean, I remember when I was drumming, I attended a clinic by the guy from Shadows Fall, Jason Bittner. I think I hope I get the name of the band and the musician right. And he clocked me standing in the corner because all the rest of the people in the audience were like half my age and they were, wanting to be metal drummers, and I was just sitting there listening and nodding my head. And then he looked over at me, and we had a conversation in the intermission. And it was clear that we were just interested in talking about music itself, not a specific genre or anything else like that, just music. And as I went back to stand where I was, he looked over my way, smiled wanly, and started playing a classic jazz swing beat with some very tasty, and giving me a nod like, "Don't worry, I'm not judging you. I'm just as I went to a local metal show, and I think the band's name was Mutilatred, and they were like, "Oh yeah, when we get off stage, sometimes we'll go in the back and hook up a couple of keyboards and do a jazz jam. Do you have your sax here? You want to join in?" And I didn't. I'm like, I was going to a metal show. Why would I bring a saxophone with me? But they're like, "Oh, what a shame. Would be really cool." And again, these were guys who were heavily tattooed and everything else. And they'd just gotten
yeah,
off a stage having done a hardcore punk, hardcore metal show, and they're like, "Oh yeah, totally. When we have our own, we'll play any of a number of things." I mean, I'll listen and play to any of a number of stuff. I mean, one of the songs, "Amy, Amy," it started at it's now "Baby, Baby" on one of the first albums, and it was
oh
written as a disco song. I wrote it as a disco song and covered it. One of
wow,
my things that I do is I'll actually I'll write a punk song and then turn around and say, okay, let me cover this as this jazz piece. Which is why sometimes I feel, Heroin Girl was an industrial song, and I said, nope, let me change the rhythm in this slightly, move it onto the upright bass, and do that. If you like music, you like music. There's very little that I won't listen to, and I've found that people who are musicians as such not only will listen to stuff, but will play any of a number of things. They won't limit themselves to just one specific idiom, unless they're performers. There are performers and content creators that do, but musicians tend to be very, very varied and very open to working with whoever. I'm sorry, I've monopolized you again.
that's okay. I love watching what's behind you as well. Very interesting guy you are. I love it. So, with all this mentioning, is there an artist you admire not just for the sound, but for their entire creative philosophy, with whom a collaboration feels like it would be a meeting of kindred spirits?
Well, unfortunately, they're dead now, and I found out that they had some problematic parts of their history. But a couple of the members of Throbbing Gristle, I would definitely like to
Mm.
work with. By the way, what's going on in the background now? I censored that. They Genesis PRH was a big influence on my life in terms of the lectures that they gave about, what do you want to do with your life and how do you want to get there? It was
Mm.
almost like thelema. It was like, work out where you want to be and then put all of your effort into getting there. I started out in Canada in the suburbs. I ended up working in Silicon Valley in the United States. And I pieced together, okay, I'm going to get this college diploma to go with my university degree, and then I'm going to get this job in the Deep South, and then that's going to segue into something in Boston, and then that's going to segue to something in Seattle. And, there was a whole life plan of there. And then I'm going to build up enough of a life experience, having lived in multiple cities and enough capital to do the kind of music I wanted to do without worrying about how to pay for it, right? So yeah, and obviously Kosi, oh gosh, I hope I'm getting their name right. Kosi Tutti Fani.
Kosik and Tutti Frutti?
Yeah, no, one of the members, formerly of Throbbing Gristle, an amazing, amazing industrial musician, came up with a fantastic with I'm gonna mangle it. Cozy
That's what Squeeze
Carter
named one of their
Void.
albums, Costi Van Tutti Frutti.
No, it's a this no this it's an industrial act, and you just put it on. It's just a whole
Mm.
experience. It was a record store on Bank Street in Ottawa that was playing it the first time I
Mm.
heard it, and these two guys were just sitting there, absolutely captivated with this sort of pulsing rhythm coming out of the speakers, and it was incredibly ambient. It took me years to find a copy, but I finally bought one. I'd love to work with people like that who think not just in terms of I mean, again, the Throbbing Gristle group also did, or I mean, the Wu-Tang Clan as well.
Oh
They
yeah.
go into visual art. They made movies. I mean, they even had a financial company at one point, right? They were thinking outside the box of I'm not just doing this. I'm building an entire world, right? And anybody that tries to sort of extend things beyond just your core standard, well, I'm just going to play some music on stage. I'm really interested in that. If you're world building and involving me in a world, if you're creating something that lets me see the world through a different set of eyes, I'm in. I may not like it. I mean, I'll tell you one thing: the Juggalos. I cannot stand ICP's music. I respect them greatly for what they do. I'm not their audience, and I can't listen to their stuff. But looking at what they've done with the whole visuals and the pro wrestling and the gathering and the costuming and the face paint and gathering everybody together to do all this together and engage in this collective idea that we're all evil clowns going around and it's like, again, not my jam, but I can certainly appreciate the fact that they found a tribe and they built it, and it's not just the record, it's the pro wrestling thing, it's the movie, they have a whole thing going, just like Kiss did. The Kiss Army. It wasn't just the records; it was a lifestyle. And I have to tip my hat to that, even if the music doesn't speak to me, right?
Yeah, that's true. So imagine you could bring a historical musical hero into the studio for a day. Who would it be, and what is the first question you would ask them about their process?
Yusef Lateef. I regret that I never got the chance to run into the man while he was alive, but I would absolutely bring back Yusef Lateef for a day, and I wouldn't ask him anything. I would just sit there and say, I'm going to listen. You have one day to impart anything you want to of your entire life's experience to me. I'm here to listen and take notes. That's all I would do. I mean, Lateef was the first guy, if I remember correctly, in the jazz world anyway, to play the bass flute, the shakuhachi, the ney, to bring world music into there, to play the soprano saxophone like a duduk, to really bring these wild textures and ideas in there. He changed his religion. He volunteered with the Hare Krishnas and at soup kitchens and stuff. He was a great guy, from all I've heard, and came up with some really cool music. And just having had that inspiration to not limit himself to the instruments that he grew up with, but to go out there and listen to other stuff and bring that in and put it all together, I'd be like, you were doing that before anyone else. What other ideas did you have that you weren't able to get to because you didn't have the technology or the time or the resources that we have now?
That's amazing, Jack. I really appreciate that. Jack Phantom, everyone. Last question. Oh, sorry. I'm Jack Phantom and the Exquisite Corpse Cabaret, Dark
Okay.
Jazz Project from Pensacola. Thank you for being on our show tonight. One final question. So, if someone comes up to you, young, old, whatever, and said, I want to do what you do, I love your music, I want to be and want to do, and I want to get into this dark stuff. And they don't have to say dark stuff. They can just say, how do I become a musician? What would you say?
Well, the very, very first thing you have to do is get some degree of competency with an instrument. Learn the basics of theory. Every other art form that you have to start somewhere. You have to start with the building blocks. And then once you've got that, listen to a lot of stuff. But the most important thing is remember what speaks to you. You will hear something and it will trigger something in you that realize that it just sort of like if you're in a room and you got a bunch of drinking glasses and all of a sudden the stereo hits a certain note and all the glasses start to vibrate in the background. I'm sure you've had that experience, right? I would say that experience, sympathetic vibration, when you're listening to something and that triggers something in you like that, remember it, right? Because you're developing your voice. right? Yes, you can copy other people, play other people's stuff, listen to other people's stuff for sure, but always be keeping in mind not what you like, but what speaks to you, what your voice is. Because you're not going to make music that sounds like mine, even if you play the same instruments I do in the same idiom. Because if that were the case, there would be no need for two blues musicians. There would be no need for two metal musicians or two rappers. Like everyone brings something to the table that's not been there before. And my biggest advice would be get down the foundational skills and play with the level of skill you need to get, but no more. Once you're able to play the stuff you need to play, use it to say your story in your own voice. That's what I would give them.
But thank you, Jack. Really appreciate this.
I didn't say no to end on.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Wait right there, Jack. Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode, and everything will be linked down below in the description. Thanks, Jack. Bye, everyone. See ya.
Far out, solid, right on.
Wait right there.